Does E3 still matter? I think this is a question going around the internet because Sony is choosing to no-show at the event next year for really the first time in their history in the video game industry. Sony will not be attending E3. They will not be revealing PlayStation 5 there or any new PlayStation 4 games or really anything at all. However, it's interesting because I think the strategy for Sony is a lot different than the rest of the industry when it comes to E3. You see, Nintendo was really the first major platform holder to change their E3 approach way back in 2011, 2012, when they decided that, hey, look, we're just not going to do press conferences anymore. We think they're a waste of money. We think things happen in the press conferences that are unpredictable, like when the Wiimote wasn't working when they were showing off Skyward Sword because of interference from cell phone devices and stuff like that. Nintendo's had a lot of cringeworthy moments on stages, but Nintendo's had also a lot of amazing moments. You can never forget the 2004 Twilight Princess reveal as maybe one of the greatest moments in all of press conference history surrounding E3. Now, it's also important to remember that E3 is not those press conferences. This is commonly a misconception with a lot of gamers because the thing we tend to get most hyped about are the press conferences because that's when we see all the new game reveals. However, E3 itself is a convention. E3 is not press conferences. Those press conferences were always a separate thing, and they happened before E3 started. So the thing is that the press conferences would kind of be a lead-in to people going hands-on at the convention. And it was a very unique convention in that sense because most other major conventions don't have press conferences that lead into the convention. And I think that's what helped make E3 stand out. But I also don't think that E3's importance is lessened just because Sony is choosing not to be there. I think the one thing that has changed over the years, and this is more so due to the internet than anything else, is that companies no longer feel they need an event like E3 to unveil systems. If you go back a decade, it would have been unheard of to unveil a brand new platform to the gaming masses outside of E3, outside of a press conference, in fact, at E3. Yet here we are in heading into 2019, very likely, with PlayStation 5 getting unveiled at some point next year, and E3 no longer being the place that Sony wishes to unveil it at, which isn't really unheard of because PlayStation 4 was unveiled at its own event with more details coming at E3. Xbox One was unveiled at its own event with more details coming at E3. But I think the big deal and the biggest reason that Sony's not going to be at E3 is because they don't actually plan to unveil PlayStation 5 early in the year. In fact, rumor has it now that they're planning to do kind of a reveal event during the summer on its own, separate from E3. And then they're going to do the big reveal, in PSX 2019, which they always do later in the year. And there's no PSX this year, so you could understand why they're skipping PSX this year, because what's the point of trying to hype up PlayStation 4 when PlayStation 5 is well on its way? And apparently PlayStation 5 is due to release at some time in 2020. That's what the current rumor mill is saying. We cannot confirm this. I've reached out to some people, haven't heard back. So we're just going to have to go with what the rumors are saying. Now, that being said, it makes perfect sense why Nintendo won't be at E3 because they don't really have any, they're not really pushing PlayStation 4 anymore, which is unlike what they did with PlayStation 3 when some of the best PlayStation 3 games came out at the end of the generation. Sony's kind of viewing it as, hey, this year was really their year, like God of War, Spider-Man, like their best of the best coming now. Yeah, they'll have some games land next year, but it's not really going to be like the big swan song year that PlayStation 3 was heading into PlayStation 4. Sony's treating it differently, which is fine. Xbox, Microsoft revealed Xbox One before E3 and then did a bigger thing at E3, which actually just confused people even more. They probably would have been better off skipping E3 that year, but that's just not what they chose to do. Nintendo, obviously, they did the teaser for Switch in a little separate trailer in October. They didn't even do a real reveal event. They just released a video on YouTube, and then they ended up doing the full-on in live, by the way. They did do a live in-person thing for Switch, which would, again, normally be associated for E3, but they did it on their own in Japan in January because they were launching the system in March. I do think if Nintendo was launching Switch, say, holiday of 2017, they might have done the live in-person thing at E3. They might have brought back the live press conference for that. But because they were targeting March, they wanted to do their own event. And I think that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And them choosing not to unveil Switch, at E3, I don't think really was that big of a deal. Nintendo focused on, Breath of the Wild. And they just, they didn't really want people worrying about what the next system was at that time because they probably just weren't ready to unveil it. Because if you unveiled it at E3 that year, it may make people expect to see it at the end of 2016 instead of the beginning of 2017. So here is where we stand right now heading into 2019. E3 2019 is going to be different than any E3 before because one of the major console players isn't going to be there. Xbox might even use this to their advantage. What if, Microsoft could literally announce a new platform and potentially be the only company doing that and literally steal the entire show by announcing a new platform at E3. But they could also choose not to do that as well. Nintendo could announce the Switch Pro or whatever or they could not. The reality is that E3 is different, but I don't think its importance has lessened because while there's a lot of other conferences out there, very few of them are like E3 where they get the international attention, they get the mass media attention, and all this does mean for someone like Nintendo is you're going to get even more attention at the show floor. You're going to see potentially Nintendo's booth expand. Will they take over, some of Sony's space they had? If you guys don't know, Nintendo and Sony's booths were always right across the walkway from each other. What if Nintendo just takes over part of Sony's booth and makes their booth even bigger, which I think Nintendo always seems to have more games than they have space for on their booth. So it would be nice to have a bigger booth, in my opinion. Just as someone who's attended E3 a couple times now, a bigger booth for Nintendo I think would be great. Maybe Microsoft, while they did their own thing, during E3 where they weren't at the convention center, but they were at their own place, maybe Microsoft comes back in and takes over that space because now it won't be as crowded. A big thing that I saw at this last E3 was it was pretty crowded in both major halls. And with Sony being gone, that's going to really open up a huge chunk of area for it to be a little less crowded. But I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing here because honestly, E3 to me lost its meaning for me when I was a kid a long time ago. Its meaning for me meant you never knew. You could get a console reveal at any of them, 3DS, Wii, N64, PlayStation, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, Xbox 3. Like, for me, it was always like you could get surprised by a console announcement, and you're going to be surprised by game announcements. And the thing is, the game announcements still happen at E3. We still get the Bethesda conferences, the EA conferences. Nintendo still does like a digital event there, and then 3 days of Nintendo Treehouse where they unveil new things throughout that. We still get a whole bunch of interviews. We get a whole bunch of hands-on gameplay of all the latest Nintendo games, more than at any other event, more than at PAX, more than at Gamescom, more than at Tokyo Game Show. Even though Nintendo doesn't officially attend Tokyo Game Show for public consumption reasons. They were at the last one taking private backdoor meetings, but they weren't on the show floor. And I always thought it was weird that Nintendo kind of boycotts Tokyo Game Show in their homeland. I never really understood that. Probably something that happened a long time ago that I just don't comprehend because I'm out in Japan and I don't have to worry about it. But like Sony not being there next year doesn't mean Sony's not going to be there in 2020, in 2021, in 2022. Reality is Sony not being there is a calculated plan because everything next year Sony is doing is geared towards revealing PlayStation 5. And they don't want to do that unveiling, that initial summer unveiling at E3 because it's going to be non-stop questions all weekend long about PlayStation 5. Meanwhile, on the show floor, all they have is PlayStation 4 and a bunch of third-party games, right? Like, they want people focusing on PlayStation 5 next year and getting hyped for that. And unveiling it at E3 might seem smart, but they're not going to really tell us much about it, right? The unveiling is going to be much like with the PlayStation 4 unveiling, or much like with the Nintendo Switch or Xbox One unveiling. You're going to get some teases. You might even get some little bit of spec sheets, but that's about it. You're not really going to know much about the games and about other things coming to the platform. That's going to be saved for a bigger event later when they're ready to unveil that stuff, aka, PSX 2019. Just like Nintendo, if they unveiled, say, the Switch Pro at E3, it feels possible because they would still have a bunch of games to talk about, and then they could do a bigger thing, a bigger direct, a bigger live event later if it was like a massive leap over the current Switch. But again, I don't expect that from Nintendo, but it is something that they might still use E3 for. So I think that E3 has just changed. It's evolved. It's a different beast today than it was before because of the internet, because of the multiple ways there are now to get the news out to the hardcore video game fans. From the Game Awards, I mean, think about this. Nintendo unveiling like a major game at the Game Awards in the past, when it used to be the Spike TV Awards, like, would be unheard of. And yet, you know, we saw the first ever gameplay reveal of Breath of the Wild at the Game Awards, right? We saw, you know, Bayonetta 3 get unveiled at the Game Awards, right? Potentially, we might see the first gameplay of Metroid Prime 4 at the Game Awards. There's so many different ways, from Nintendo Directs and PSX and, you know, Xbox showcases and all the stuff for, like, the Game Awards, for these companies to unveil things, that E3 isn't really needed for that all-encompassing once-per-year major event. And in that way, E3's importance has been lessened in terms of it being needed to get the word out about video games and new systems. However, I don't think the overall importance of the entire industry coming together to create excitement around gaming has gone away. And this isn't just me saying because I went to E3 last year, or me hoping that E3 doesn't die. This is me saying that E3 is just a very special event. It just is. And when you attend it in person, like, they're letting gamers in now. Like, when you go there, even if you can't go inside, if you're just around it, something's different in LA. Something's different around that convention center. You feel like you are at a massive video game event. And there's nothing quite like that in the world. Even Gamescom, which creates a very good atmosphere for itself, and this isn't me slighting Gamescom, it's not the same kind of atmosphere as E3. There's excitement. There's a buzz in the air. A lot of times at E3, these will be the first time these gameplay demos are available. I got to play Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee before most of you. Why? I was there for the very first demo available for it at E3. And E3 is still the perfect place for that kind of stuff. The new Xbox games, the new Nintendo games, the new games from EA, Bethesda, etc. They're going to be first playable at E3. So there's still a lot of excitement around E3. It's still a big deal. Nintendo has already come out in wake of Sony backing out saying, hey, we're still going to be at E3. Nothing changes for us. Business as usual. We see no reason not to continue to show up. And again, Sony's going to be back in 2020. Sony's just in the midst of, we have PlayStation 4 hitting 100 million in sales. We have PlayStation 5 coming. Rumor has it PlayStation 5 is going to be a $500 behemoth with a Ryzen 8 core processor. Like, what the hell? Is that like, I even question, like, is it 4 cores, 8 threads, or is it 8 cores, 16 threads, or is it just 8 raw cores with no hyper-threading? I don't know. The PlayStation 5 is going to be a crazy system. Just like the Xbox Scarlet or the Xbox 2 or whatever they call it is probably going to be a crazy system. And that obviously has me concerned about Switch's future, but we could talk about that in a different video. E3 is just different. And I want to throw this to you guys. And what are your thoughts on E3? Is E3 less important now than it used to be? Because it's not necessarily the place where we're going to get console announcements. Now we're going to be down, Sony's obviously not going to have a press conference there. Nintendo, doesn't do press conferences. They still do digital events, which I think are still a huge deal. Is the importance of E3 to you, the gameplay that comes out, the interviews that come out of it. Like, for me, E3 is an event, not just if you attend it, but when I'm watching at home, you get all of the interviews, you get all of the game reveals, you get all of the first time seeing true gameplay of these games, not just from the companies, but from media and now gamers going hands-on. I think this is a very special event. It's just a different kind of special than it used to be. For some people, probably worse. For some people, probably better. And I actually want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I do still plan to attend E3 next year, hopefully. And we'll see if... It's going to feel weird not having Sony at this one. Nintendo has never indicated they ever plan to just not show up. But not having Sony there is a whole new thing. You would never see that in the past. But they are focused on PlayStation 5, and they have a reveal plan for PlayStation 5 in place that they're not going to deviate from just because E3 happens at a time that is inconvenient for them in terms of their launch plans for PlayStation 5. Anyways, folks, I'm Nathaniel Rumpelchance from Nintendo Prime, and if you like this video, you know what to do, and if you dislike the video, hit that dislike button. If you're looking to get in on our Super Smash Bros. Nintendo Switch Ultimate, whatever, giveaway, we have a Gleam.io link down in the description. Sure to check it out. All that's required is that you're subscribed to the channel. Hey, we're almost at 40,000 subscribers as well. Maybe we'll do like a bonus stream or something for that if we end up hitting it this week. Otherwise, folks, I'll just catch all of you guys in the next one.